word that might define her. After eons locked inside the emptiness, her mind was slow to provide information. Name, 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 name. And then, slowly, a word drifted up from the recesses of her mind. It was a short word, but it was hers, nonetheless. Tate. Her name was Tate. Chapter 1. The breeze caressed Tate's face and arms, teasing several copper-colored strands from its tight braid as she leaned against the ship's railing. It brought with it the salty smell of the ocean, a smell she'd become familiar with over the last 8 months aboard the Marauder. It was a comforting smell, invoking memories of being rocked to sleep by the waves after sharing a meal with friends. She rubbed a finger over the weathered wood of the railing and folded her arms over it. She grimaced and plopped her chin onto her folded arms. Time to make a decision. She'd spent the last week lying awake at night, unable to sleep as she went over every detail of her plan. Even now, she didn't know if she had the courage to leave the ship at the next port, or if she would choose the familiar and stay. "What do you think?" Guilt made Tate jumpy, and she tightened her grip on the rail as she straightened. She made a non-committal sound, hoping the captain would move along. "When I first saw the jewel of the Aurelian Empire, I was in awe," he said about the city, resting tanned forearms on the rail beside her. His tall figure dwarfed hers. Standing straight, she still only came up to his shoulder. "It took a while for me to see it wasn't so different from other cities. There are still murderers, double dealings, and work for men intent on skulking about." "Is that so?" Tate said, keeping her attention on the city coming into view. The captain was right. It was magnificent. The sun was just coming up, and dawn gently cradled the city in its arms, setting it alight with orange and pinks. A slim peninsula embraced one side of the harbor, forming a half-crescent moon mirrored on the other side by high cliffs. It allowed a strip of open water so ships could pass through before deepening into the wide pool of the harbor. On one side, a tower stood sentry. It housed the massive chain they strung across the harbor in times of siege. It was meant to protect the lower city from a sea invasion, and its presence hinted at a violent history or turbulent present. Framed by the tower and cliffs, the city sprawled in a maze of buildings and streets. A palace, complete with majestic towers and gleaming windows, sat atop cliffs formed from a black rock that sparkled brilliantly in the sunlight. It was an architectural wonder, the crowning piece of the city, and people came from all over the empire to see it. "First time in Aurelia?" Tate kept her sigh to herself. It figured that he'd want to chat. He hadn't had much of a presence on deck over the last few weeks, choosing instead to remain in his cabin and plan the next job. Now, when she was thinking mutinous thoughts, he popped up like a bad luck charm. Since she hadn't exactly volunteered to be on his ship in the first place, she saw her departure more as a continuation of her life's journey. He, on the other hand, would see it as a revolt. It wasn't that she wanted to leave. Quite the opposite, in fact. She loved the freedom of the open seas and seeing the world, one country's port at a time. But it had been made abundantly clear to her over the last few months that there was only so much weirdness a crew could take, especially from a female. When members of the crew cornered her in her bunk and told her to leave or else, Tate had gotten the message. Being a female on an all-male crew was difficult enough, add odd things happening when she was around, and the situation was impossible. She'd considered telling the captain,